You're at Gangrene UK. You're joining us again for episode 30. We're doing a slightly later than normal game review on the Week 9 game against the Colts. I'm joined with James and Otis, and we're going to go over last Thursday. So, what we're saying, boys, it's been a week on, so we've had time to forget some of the good and some of the bad. But how we feeling about it?
It showed that the Bengals wasn't a flash in the pan on offense. I think that there's been a step forward made. I think the fact that they've done what they've done with putting LaFleur up in the booth, employing Zach's quarterback coach on the sideline, I think it shows that the team is evolving, is willing to do things differently, isn't just stuck going, oh, this is what we're doing for the whole season and that's all it's going to be. I think there was a lot of positives in that respect.
What about you, James?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as it was said, the offense showed that it could still score points and still get first downs with, whoever's at the helm. We've had 3 quarterbacks now. But the main thing for me was just defense, and just it's been disappointing the past couple of weeks, but huge gaps on the running lanes and just, getting pushed 5 yards back before the ball's even really got into Taylor's hands, and just a bad display in general from him, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, LaFleur in the booth said this week 1. I'm going to say every week that he's in the booth. I said this in week 1. Yeah, I mean, penalties was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 penalties. I don't know what the odds are, but I think it was near the 100-yard mark on penalties, because I know it was a couple of 15s and then a half distance, wasn't it? I mean, we can't get by doing that. No. But we'll move on to offense, because obviously that's a big talking point. But what we saying, what happened to defense, guys?
I think there's definitely some sort of concerns on defense in terms of how the line is holding up to run stop. But I think it is worth noting, particularly this week against the Colts, they have one of the best offensive lines in football,
if not the best.
Yeah, with arguably a top 5 running back in Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the only reason that Taylor fell in the draft was the fact that he'd run so well and so much in college. They didn't believe he could possibly do it in the pros because he was going to be tired. It's like, okay, but he's still only a kid and he's still going to run hard and do what he does. I don't think anyone's surprised now by what Jonathan Taylor does. And I think it was just a combination of Taylor playing well, line playing well, and then Hines coming in as that change of pace guy. They just weren't ready to run sideline to sideline for him. They'd had it pounded up their gut by Jonathan Taylor, and really Hines just wasn't what they needed. It just completely broke the defense.
What do you see, James?
Pretty similar thing. The Colts record doesn't really reflect them this season. They've played a lot of good teams and lost some close games, and it's a very talented team. So in general, I just thought there was a lack of pressure all game as well. Carson kind of did what he wants after he's been pressured all season. Wasn't a big fan of that, but yeah, I don't know, just a poor showing in general.
See, so everybody now who has ever watched the video knows I hate the Colts. Can't stand them. But they have got one of the most beautiful offensive lines in football. Just watching them move, you can tell that they are so in sync. I think they've been together as a core pretty much with the coach and everything for about 3 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going up against something like that is a big test. And our rotation on D-line, I think, doesn't help us at times. I understand that we've got pass block, we've got run block. That game, we didn't even have a block. If we were Lego, we had none. It was that bad. What was you say?
I think it's a big thing as well that needs to be sort of mentioned as well, is around the linebackers at the moment. The linebackers are being asked to play quite a lot of zone coverage underneath, which is fine. It helps the corners. It means that if someone comes inside, they can just worry about the outside guys. It really does help them. It keeps us at a man, which isn't a bad thing. And if we are in man, it also means they don't have to worry quite so much if they come inside because they've got help. But the way that that's affecting us quite badly is that when the play action starts to come and a team like the Colts are running the ball so well, and you saw it with Wentz, it opens up so many passing lanes because the linebackers have to respect that Jonathan Taylor's beating our 4 men. They have to step forward and play the run as a 3, which they do very well. But instantly there's a 10 to 15 yard hole between where the linebackers should have been and where the safeties now are because they're covering deep. And it causes a huge problem for the Jets because the corners just aren't good enough to cover all the way across the field. We've got some great corners and they're young and they're improving. But asking them to cover a third is a lot easier than asking them to cover whole field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we saw this in the Bengals game because it was very similar, but we were allowing yards to come because we knew we could stop them before a first down. And then we knew when it got to 3rd and short and they were going to plummet it in, we could run stop.
Yeah. And
that's what we did. We brought them down. But with the Colts, like you said, when they were bringing Hines in and they were switching it around, we didn't know what was coming.
Yeah.
I am going to say one thing. I believe you agree with me, Otis. Ashton Davis took some stick that game that was very much undeserved. Yes, he did some ugly runs. Yes, he missed some tackles. But he also recorded like a team high of 10 with 3 assisted and 2 forced fumbles. Like, that is the only bonus we had on defense was the fact that it wouldn't have been the 28-point deficit that we were chasing back. It would have been about a 40-point deficit if he hadn't chased that last man. So yeah, I'm going to kind of fight his corner that actually Ashton Davis had some heart in that game.
Yeah, and one of the things with Ashton as well that is difficult, and occasionally when he did get beat, people said, oh, he took a bad angle and things. And to a certain extent, yes, he did take a couple of bad angles, but you've also got to respect the speed and agility of both their running backs. Taylor's a big guy, but he moves very well, and his cutback is immensely strong. And so is Hines's. And a lot of the time when he was caught on an angle, it was stopping the cutback. He was trying to use the sideline to help him by stopping the guy coming back inside, because if he comes back inside and goes around him, there's nobody there. He is the last man. And a couple of times it looked like he was going to sort of potentially make a mistake or whatever else. But he seemed to hold up fairly well, I thought.
I thought Quinnen was better. I thought Quinnen played a lot better. I don't know whether it was because he played a little bit more. I don't have the snap percentage, but I believe he was on the field a little bit more. So we heard him a little bit more. 8 tackles, 1 assisted. But Quinnen's strong-handed. Like, his hands, he's moving people. But he is double-teamed pretty much every week.
He's starting to command a bit more respect in the run game now as well, which is helping him. I don't think Salah was overly fond of his run ability in terms of run stop ability and how he was standing up against the run, which I think is why his snap count was a bit lower. The other thing that really helps Quinnen is when Rankins is in. Rankins sees a lot of double teams. I watched the Colts game back. I didn't watch it on the Thursday night. I watched it back a couple of days later. And whenever Rankins is in, he almost always picks up a double team. The center and a guard almost always fall on Rankins, which is potentially why we're seeing a bit more Quinnen success as well. I think there's other players now taking up the odd double team. Particularly, I think John Franklin Myers is taking up more double teams now than he did at the start of the season. And I think you're also seeing more double teams for Rankins than you did earlier as well.
Yeah, fair. Great points. Any other notes on defense that you want to do, James, before we jump on to any special teams or anything?
No, not really anything. Probably just to piggyback on that, Ashton Davis was an easy scapegoat in a pretty all-round bad performance, but I don't think he was the main bad point anyway. But apart from that, no.
I think it's worth noting as well that again CJ put in a huge performance again. Although we weren't great against the run, although he had to step up in a lot of play action situations and was beaten by the pass potentially, he still registered a 10 tackle game, 5 solo, 5 assisted. He was still in and around the ball again, and I was pleased to see that, particularly when May had to leave the game. I was a bit concerned that there was going to be certain spots attacked and he was going to have to sort of compensate for that slightly and maybe edge and help that safety that come in to replace May. But I think he did a good job and played well that game.
So I kind of want to throw out an apology to May, because on the game thread, I kind of saw that play as him giving up, but I think the actual injury happened 2 plays earlier. So he stayed on, obviously hurt. And that last play, when he goes down on that last play, it looked like he just went, whatever, I'm done. But I think it was because he genuinely was done, because it happened earlier. Because I went back through the 22 film just to see that bit.
Yeah.
Because I was really miffed off. Like so miffed off. But when I watched it back, I was like, well, actually, you can see he took some bad hits to the leg. So, yeah, maybe it was a bit harsh. But at the end of the day, we're all fans. We all have a go. But I'm big enough to say
I think
I was wrong.
I think May's not helped himself either. I think May had a lot of affection from the Jets fans. And if he'd have just kept his mouth shut, played under the tag, taken his payment next year, because I think we'd have signed him next year. I think he'd have still received the love from the Jets fans, and I think he'd still have got good money next year. And he's not exactly on bad money this year. I think, unfortunately, again, it's the curse of social media and what we expect as fans now. We want the players to be interacting with us. We want the players to be saying stuff on social media. But then the second they say something negative, we all want to slay them for it. And it's like, you moan when they're not saying anything, you moan when they're boring and they just get on with their job, and then you moan when they say something that you don't like. It's sort of a bit like,
it's our prerogative, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just want to be annoyed.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the slightly brighter spark. I'm not going to talk about QBs yet, because we'll probably finish on that. Who's your highlights on offense? I know who you're both going to say, but James, over to you.
Yeah, Elijah Moore breakout game, really, wasn't it? I think we mentioned that. Otis mentioned earlier that one of them was a bust coverage, but it was still great to see. It was 7 receptions, 84 yards. Yeah, breakout game. Michael Carter, not the best game from him, but still solid. And Ty Johnson as well.
I'm going to say with Carter took a lot more heat this week because of the week prior. Yeah. People were there's film on Carter now. They know what he's got. And like we said, the Colts line play on both sides. They are pretty solid. They are a trench team.
They're a very good defensive team as well. Buckner is an absolute freak. They've got a good defensive line. They've got Quitty Payne now that they drafted this year. As you guys know, I was hugely high on Quitty when he came out of college. I thought he was going to be an absolute monster. So yeah, I'm not surprised at Carter at that game.
So what are we saying about Mims? Because we have to talk about it, because we've talked about him probably every week for the last 5 weeks. Free Mims. I want to buy Denzel Mims some super glue. I want to put it on his numbers, because that's where we seem to hit him and he doesn't catch.
Yeah.
If we put it behind him, he catches it. Put it in front of him, he catches it. Put it on his numbers, boy can't catch.
No.
I think it's worth a little bit on the Mims situation as well, cutting him some slack in terms of getting back into a rhythm. Although I agree, he's got to be catching those balls, and when they're hitting him in the numbers, there's no excuse for it. But this is a kid that hasn't been in the offense, hasn't been out there running plays, hasn't had a DB jawing him, hasn't had a crowd shouting at him. I think it's disappointing to see him make the drops, especially when he's open. He's the really encouraging thing with Mims is I think Mims is actually getting open. It is actually proving to be quite effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
He creates separation. He's using his body well. He's running routes much better than he was. I think that signs point to Mims being a viable wide receiver later in this year and also in years to come. The bit that is a bit concerning is the drops. But again, if that's just a bit of concentration, if that's just a bit of I'm out of rhythm, I'm not doing what I was, I kind of want to cut him some slack. We've seen other wide receivers go through dropsies. Jamar Chase did it in the preseason. Okay, it's only preseason, but he was finding his rhythm. He was getting used to playing with Burrow again. He was running NFL routes. He was doing what he had to do. Mims has only been back, 3 weeks now in the offense, probably, I would say. Yeah. And I don't think
why Davis has been out.
Yeah, I don't think you can say he's played enough to get his rhythm yet.
What about you, James? Where do you sit on the Mims fence?
No, but he is. All Jets fans love him, don't they? And they've been waiting for him to get on the field for quite a while. And yeah, just disappointing, really. But you can see he blocks very well in the run game as well. There's a lot of clips of him making some big holes for runs to the outside. So I think, as Otis says, might be a concentration job. He seems to be getting open, and he's made some pretty, like, what would you call them, like circus catches. Made some big catches. So I think, I think he's, I like Braxton Berrios, but like there's definitely a spot for him, I would say, on the team.
Well, I tend to agree. Now, the one thing, like it was said at the beginning, Mims wasn't getting time because he wasn't being able to do certain things. He came back and he's shown that he's a very good blocker.
Yeah.
Right. So he's developed that part.
He's learned what they wanted him to learn.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, isn't it?
And it's one of them. I'm finding it frustrating because we know how good he can be.
Yeah.
But my fear is at the minute we're going to have a Robbie Anderson situation where he's good one game, then shit for three, then good for one game, then bad for three. We're getting like every time we see Mims on the stat sheet, it's like average 20 yards a catch because he's fast, he's strong, he makes that. But then we get somebody like Jeff Smith, who we all know he's a viable wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver one, but he works in certain packages. He's a decent player. 3 catches, 40 yards, 13 average. His longest was 14. That is down to, like you said, he's got the experience behind him. But a lot of the arguments are you have to go with who's hot. But then again, Corey Davis hasn't caught a ball in the first quarter in any game yet.
Yeah.
But he's still wide receiver number one.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't drop him just because he's having a time getting into the offense.
Yeah.
But I do need to see, like, I want to see Denzel Mims catch one in the end zone that he can catch, that he doesn't have to contest for. Just make that easy grab. And when he starts making them, his confidence is going to go through the roof.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd love to see, and he had a couple of opportunities with Zach, and Zach actually missed him. I'd like to see him get free on a long play. I'd like to see him stretch his legs, take on a corner, and be hit in stride and just breeze past the safety, end up in that end zone and go, there you go. That's what I do. That's
I have arrived.
Yeah. And just show that strength, that high point in the ball. At Baylor, the one thing that they were praising him for is contested catches and being able to come down with the ball. He was a great jumper. He was physical in the air. Give him the chance to do that. Mims, even in the early weeks when he was only playing 3 or 4 snaps, it would be on a go route or a double route, a stop and go and things like that. And he'd be missed. Zach missed him a couple of times. He missed him in the Carolina game. And you sort of think to yourself, well, if he gets one of those and you take it 50 yards to the house and you spike the ball in the end zone in a corner's face, you get a bit of your mojo back and you start to do things better and better and better. And I think the getting open consistently is huge. In the NFL, once you know how to get open consistently, teams will give you a bit of time. And I think he's buying himself that time now, which is another huge factor. I've shown you I can block. This is something that all wide receivers need to do. A wide receiver that can block can have a career in the NFL and do nothing but block because it's such a vital thing on the outside.
I mean, there's been a couple. There's been a couple over time.
Well, look at Corey. We've just paid him 15 million because he blocks on the outside. Corey, the reason that Henry was so great to the outside in Tennessee was because Corey Davis blocks so well on the outside. Yes, he's a decent wide receiver, but he never got to the peaks they thought he was going to. Obviously, the Jets are hoping he's going to, and we paid him big money to get to those peaks. But the Titans give Corey his whole rookie contract to do it and to get there. Well, if we do the same with Mims, who says he's not going to get there, you know?
Yeah, definitely a project. But how do you two feel about tight ends? Obviously, Croft going down is a bit of a wound. We got Yeboah on the practice squad still. Suppose you worked one out. But...
I was a bit sad, really, James, because Ant asked you what your highlight was and didn't ask me, and I was just a bit, left out because I think my highlight was the tight ends once Croft went down. That would have been, if I was going to pick one thing that I was impressed by. Moore had a good game and he caught the balls that come to him and he did his job, which was great. He had an extra touchdown on a busted coverage. He might make that catch anyway. He might beat the corner anyway. So, Moore's had a good game. That's fine. But you've got Wesco, you've got Ryan Griffin that didn't expect to be in that game, catching passes and being an effective part of the offense. Croft goes down and both Griffin and Wesco managed to snag balls, gain yards, and function. Wesco looked everything that you'd expect a tight end fullback to be, which was big, cumbersome, fairly bruising once he gets the ball in his hands. Never going to be run down the seam, but in the flat is okay. And Griffin looked feasible. Griffin caught the majority of the balls that were thrown to him. I think he had 6 or 7 targets and caught 4 or 5 balls, and obviously had a touchdown. So I think it was disappointing to see Croft go down, obviously, but I was surprised by how effective the guys that come in to replace him were.
See, my worry with Ryan Griffin is a great red zone tight end.
Yeah.
But the thought of using him outside of the red zone, there's no point.
But I think that's okay. I think...
I'm not against that, but we still need a tight end that can be that, 3 down tight end, and then you bring Griffin on in the red zone type thing.
Yeah, go on.
I just feel like Ryan Griffin gets a lot of credit because he gets touchdowns.
Oh,
he's not Gronk. he's not for me. He's not even on the level of what I would class as top 15, top 20.
No, I personally don't think he's. I don't think he's a starting NFL tight end. If we're being entirely honest. However, what I would say, and what I think is potentially a positive in this whole situation, is the Jets can still go 4 wide and have 4 functioning wide receivers on the field. You've got Cole, Davis, Moore, and Crowder. No quarterback in the league needs more wide receivers of that quality an option than those, which means you can play Ryan Griffin and you can leave him on the end of that line and go Zach Wilson, Mike White, whoever it's going to be. That big motherfucker is going to sit on the end and cover whoever needs help. We don't need to see the tight end out in the routes all the time. Yes, it makes the offense a little bit more one-dimensional, but we have the quality of wide receivers. If we go spread, that it shouldn't make a difference. There shouldn't be a huge glaring hole if we can't use a tight end all the time. If you can use him on short down situations, we know Griffin can get a 5-yard contested ball. We know he can catch in the end zone, as you say. If Wesco can sneak out occasionally when you don't think he's going to and rumble for 8 or 9 yards, great.
Right, we'll give him 8. We won't give him 9. 9 might kill him. 8's enough.
I don't think we're going to see any of them running down the seam like George Kittle.
I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I do agree, right? But it's this thing of fans glorifying the wrong people.
Yeah.
Right? Do not put a crown on Ryan Griffin's head because he can catch a contested ball.
No.
90% of our team can do that. We need something a little bit more.
You need the athlete, which
yeah.
which neither of them are.
Yeah.
You need that guy like Kittle, like Kelsey, the Pitts. You need the athletes that's going to get you a mismatch. And although Griffin is big enough to give you a mismatch against most linebackers and most corners because of the height, he's never going to be a mismatch in athleticism. So you're never going to see the big plays, which is what you get from the other tight ends with the mismatch in height as well, usually.
I mean, I'm hoping that Yeboah can show something because I do feel like he's a little bit more athletic, but he's nowhere near ready, or he would have played by now.
You've got a man crush on your Yeboah, though, haven't you?
But I liked him. I had him high coming out of the draft, kind of like the same way. But he is better than what he's shown. But I don't know why he's not shown it.
I think the issue that you've got with Yeboah is that you couldn't put him on the end of the line and go, make sure you get a good block on that defensive end because you're helping out our backup left tackle.
Yeah, he's more like a chunky slot receiver.
Yeah, he plays the Kyle Pitts role, which is don't ask me to block, let me go run out there and I'll catch your balls, which is absolutely fine if you've got an offensive line that can keep your quarterback healthy and keep him upright. We're not at that point at the moment where we can take the luxury of going, let's split out the tight end every play and put him out there because Zach will be dead or Mike White, whoever it might be. You know, we're going to need that tight end in the game. And even I think against the Bills, I wouldn't be shocked to still see two tight end sets and have both Wesco and Griffin on the end of the line, maybe even one each side, and go, there's your help tackles. These two are going to be here. And let's see if we can get the ball out to these guys and make catches with three players in the routes. And obviously, having both tight ends in there gives Michael Carter again a greater chance to run because Wesco is there as a blocker. You've got Griffin there as a blocker, who's effective as well. You're going to have a better run game, hopefully.
So, James, that's how we feel about tight ends.
Yeah, no one asked my opinion.
Now we've kind of we've just touched on it. We have to talk about it. We don't have long left, and I've deliberately left it till the end because we could talk a couple of hours on it. Quarterbacks. Mike went down with a numb hand. His stats were very good. 7 for 11, 95 yards, 1 touchdown. His rating was 1.214. What are we thinking?
Yeah, pretty solid display from both, to be fair. But it didn't. I mean, it did drop off a bit when Josh Johnson came in, but not hugely. It was obviously, I think it was more getting boat raced by the Colts, but definitely in that fourth quarter, he made some great throws, and I think, yeah, I still think this offense is just primed for Zach to jump back in after, you know, we play the Bills this Sunday, and then we'll see what happens. But I'm liking it so far.
Always.
I think we've got to be careful. I think at the end of the day, we're Jets fans. We've seen a quarterback win a game. We're all very excited. The Bengals game, we win. There's a very dodgy ref call in there that gives us the win. Without that, we likely don't win that game. So let's slow the roll on the Mike White beat the Bengals thing. The refs beat the Bengals for us. The other thing I think to be very cautious of is the Colts game. Yes, Mike started well. We don't know what he'd have done if he played the whole game because he just didn't make it out there. Josh Johnson's numbers do, as James says, look good, but the Colts had a 28-point lead and played contained defense for pretty much the entire second half. They were giving up 6 to 7 yards without the corners contesting. They weren't even bothering to put hands on the receivers. That's the benefit of having a 28-point lead. Don't risk getting a receiver jammed up. Don't risk him doing his ACL when he's twisted with feet in and around his own feet. It makes sense from the Colts side of things, but it does inflate quarterback numbers, which is why Josh Johnson had so many easy completions a lot of the game and could move the ball quite so easily. It's also why we got away from the run game, because you don't really stop playing as a 300-pound defensive end or defensive tackle. You have to play the game physically, otherwise you get hurt. So the corners are the easy target. You start passing the ball a lot. I think I agree completely with James in respect to it's prime for Zach to come back in. We've made the decision to put the offensive coordinator up in the booth, which is where he likes to be. That's where he calls the best games by the looks of things. But we've also then hired Zach's quarterback coach to sit on the sideline and be in his ear and say, well done, Zach, you did that well. Zach, don't do that again. You did that badly. Of course, that's going to benefit Mike White. It's going to benefit Josh Johnson. But I think it's worth bearing in mind, and I was discussing this with Brad on the page today, and some of you will have seen it. We're talking about Mike White, and everyone's sort of going, oh, he's doing quite well and everything else. And he is. This guy's been in the NFL for 3 years, though. What you've got to be looking at is this is a guy that's had the opportunity to learn for 3 years. The Cowboys have got a fairly decent quarterback named Dak. You're going to learn some stuff off him, and practice squads and everything else. You're going to be getting reps every week. Zach has come into this. He's 3 months into his NFL career in terms of a season. He's been hurt already. Okay, that's fine. Going to come back. When you weigh up all the college tape, all of what we've seen already, the live arm, the ability to direct play against the Titans, you saw it with Davis and the long touchdown, the ability to throw the deep ball. I think you can't get away from the future as to winning 2 or 3 games this year. Both of these quarterbacks probably let us win 2 or 3 games this year that Zach won't win. But Zach will win 10 or 12 games in 2 or 3 years' time. These guys will still be winning 3 or 4 games. That's the sort of upshot of it all, I think. And I think the other thing to really bear in mind is we saw it particularly against the Bengals and a bit against the Colts, but Mike White went out. One of the big flaws with Mike White is he doesn't have arm strength, not huge arm strength. We play in a very cold and a very windy environment in New York, and he hasn't completed a pass over 25 yards. Zach Wilson airs a ball out for 50 yards and goes, do you want me to put some more on it and throw a bit further? There is no issue with arm strength. And when you're playing in New York in the cold months, when they come, and in Foxborough and in everywhere else where he's going to have to win in order to be a success with us, you need that arm strength and that arm talent. And it's just not something Mike White has naturally. He's a very good mechanics thrower. He hits the open guy. He reads the defense well, but you have to do that when you don't have the arm strength to make special plays. That's my opinion on the quarterbacks, and I appreciate others are different, but that's my sort of feedback on it.
I think we look at it like we always do, we do get excited at times. I mean, yes, I was over the moon that Mike White won. I thought he played very well. I genuinely believe he did a lot better against the Bengals because they were ill prepared for him. They were not expecting to see him. They'd done all of their prep ready for Zach. Zach's injury was late announced, really. We knew he was down. We knew it was bad, but we didn't know he was out. We didn't announce it till Tuesday or Wednesday. By that point, they've done 3 practices getting ready for Zach's legs, Zach's arm strength. I know I've repeated this a few times. It's the same as when Baker Mayfield came in against the Jets. We had that lead and he demolished us because we were like, we won't even look at him. What's the point? He's sitting on the bench. Now, Mike is right to start this week.
Yep.
Because Zach isn't 100% fit. Now, for me, I want to put Zach in because I want to see what we're getting, because I would rather know sooner rather than later if he's not the man.
Yeah.
Because we've had the man before. I think we've all kind of came around to the fact now that he needs a lot more help than what we thought he needed, because he's not even doing it where he is now. But we've seen it multiple times. Now, it's easy to get excited because he's doing check down football.
Yeah. It's completions, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the big thing. And Ant is right. It's what I would refer to as nickel and dime football. It's that receiver's going to be open in 3 yards, throwing the ball. He's a lot more talented than you're ever going to be. Let him run the next 7 yards, because you're not going to hit him at 10 yards, but you can hit him at 4 or 5, and Elijah Moore can make the corner miss and go 15. There's a big reason that he doesn't throw 25 yards, because he isn't that accurate at that distance, and there's a lot more can go wrong. If he hits Elijah Moore or Denzel Mims or Corey Davis at 7, 6, 5 yards and they take it 25, he still looks great. It still goes on the stats, and you're giving it to the more talented player. It's a really, really whack comparison. So please, guys, don't take this as what I'm saying. Mike White's like this. It's what you see with Brady. He is now a distributor to better players. Yes, he's still got good arm strength. Yes, he can still read a defense and do everything that he's always been able to do. But he now has 3 wide receivers in that team, which are a mile better football player than him now, including 2 running backs that are both starting quality, that all he has to do is get one of them the ball and they will do something themselves. They will beat the guy. They will make the play. It's all about just getting them the ball. And Mike White did that against the Bengals, and that's what made it look so good. And against the Colts, we had a lot of soft coverage because of their lead.
So, yeah, this week, obviously, we mentioned Mike starting. I think he's had the benefit as well of this new scheming, and you can't say it's not a new scheme. We're opening up with passes. We opened up every single play with runs with Zach. I don't care what anybody says. They have changed the way they style a game. They've had to. It's a totally different quarterback. Now, we're going up against the number 1 defense. However, I'm not going to take that as an excuse if Mike White gets beat, because Mike White has played well. If he's played up against the Colts defense, it is legit. They're very good. The Bengals have been playing exceptionally well. They shut down Lamar Jackson very easily the week before, right? So we're going in against the Bills, coming off the back of a horrible defeat. Yes, they didn't allow many points, but let's face it, that's because the Jags can't score many points.
Yeah.
It's not down to anything else. The Jags were awful, but the Bills were even worse. Now, they're not going to do that 2 weeks. They're fully prepared for the Jets. They know exactly what we're like. Last week, we didn't even practice for the Colts game. We didn't even do walkthroughs. We sat in the office and did meetings. Right? Now, we're coming off a Thursday night game.
A long week.
Going against a rival that, if we're honest, haven't changed their style of play for 3 years.
Yeah, we know how they play. We should be game planned up to be able to play against these guys.
So our first 15 players, fully scripted. I fully expect Mike White to probably go 10 for 10, 5 run attempts, and we should move the ball well.
I would expect to see points on the opening drive on Sunday. Not because I think that's a realistic expectation for Mike White every drive, but certainly because they know the Bills defense. They're going to have had 10 days to get ready for it. And they know, as you say, the Bills scheme. They should be able to scheme the best 7 or 8 plays to beat that defense and, in theory, get us into sort of field goal range, if not and red zone range and touchdown range. I think the thing to be very cautious of is, as everyone says, is you don't know what football's going to be like until you get hit in the face. And I suspect Mike White might be hit in the face on Sunday more than he's been hit in the face for a little while.
Yeah, Mario is going to get him at least once.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why they've chose to hold Zach out the extra week as well. I think if we're being honest, although it's not a nice thing to say, I think Mike White is being used as a human shield at the moment, just to sort of go, but you get help.
Essentially, Mike White is still a backup. That is his job.
Yeah.
Now, there is bonuses going into the game. Stephon Diggs has been a shadow of last year, fortunately. Now, we know that's because we know he's the number 1 threat. So he's taking man-to-man coverage and they're having to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But Zach Moss may not make the game. He's still limited in practice, very limited apparently, which he's been their better runner.
Yeah.
I don't fancy Singletary going through Q and rankings.
No.
Because he's not as strong. Whereas Zach Moss has got a bit about him in shake off. Quinnan gets his hand on his leg, he ain't going anywhere, Singletary. No. So I feel like with a good game plan, it is a winnable game.
Yeah.
Right? But for me to go, Mike White deserves to play the week after, Mike White has to single-handedly win that game. Because it's the same for Johnson last week. Everyone went, well, he played well. He didn't lose the game. But he threw the interception.
Yeah.
Yes, it was unlucky, but it came off his hand. Because we can't go around and go, well, Zach threw an interception, but it got tipped. Well, it's Zach's fault. But then when another one gets tipped off another quarterback, we can't say that it's not the quarterback's fault. We have to be equal across all of them. So for me, if we stop turnovers and Ashton Davis gets a few more, because I'm on the Ashton train, we can actually play well in this game. But we will need players to play well. If they come in and are okay, more so meaning Mike White, if he comes in, checks down and gets the easy yards, that for me is not a start of the week after if Zach's fit. He's coming in and holding the spot.
Yeah, and I think the other point as well is that I genuinely don't believe that against the Bills defense, check down football works. So we're going to see whether the issues that we believe exist with Mike White really do exist, because you can't play check down football against the linebackers and the corners and the safeties that Buffalo possess. Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Edmonds, the linebacker. If you check down against them guys, you're just going to get hit in the mouth and you're going to get stopped. You know, it's not a case of beating them and being more athletic than them. That defense is as athletic as you can possibly get, and it's as physical as you can get.
So, quick prediction before we sign off. We've run over a little bit. It's not like it was. James, what are you saying for either stats or score for the weekend?
Gonna go. I don't want to do it. I'm going to say, I think the Bills are going to win, but I hope my answer will go with 21-14 to the Jets. But I expect the Bills could blow us out, and they have blown teams out this season. So we'll see what happens.
What are you saying, Otis?
31-3.
With no swing.
I genuinely think it could be, not because I don't believe in Mike White, not because I want Zach to be the guy and not Mike. I genuinely believe the Bills are going to be so pissed off about what happened against the Jaguars that the Jets will face the best. Yeah, that it'll be the best Bills team that plays this season next week.
Yeah, I've got to say, if I was doing the spread, I would want Jets 15 plus 15.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah,
we'll be on the game thread. We'll chat it through. We'll see it together. Win, lose or tie. I mean, I would take a tie right now. If you said to me we don't have to play and we get a tie, I'd take it. I mean, to be fair, I would take a loss by 3.
Yeah, I'd take being close.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We did run over. We apologise. We'll see you next time, which will be in a couple of days. See you soon.